Carthage, one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world, experienced several significant defeats during the three Punic Wars with Rome, spanning from 264 BCE to 146 BCE. These defeats not only affected Carthage's military capabilities, but also marked the gradual decline of the empire. In this article, we will explore the major defeats of Carthage in the Punic Wars and the reasons behind these failures. Defeats in the First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE. 1. The Battle of Drepana, 249 BCE. During the early phase of the First Punic War, Carthage had the upper hand due to its superior navy. However, its first major defeat occurred at the Battle of Drepana in 249 BCE. The event, the Roman forces, under the command of Claudius Pulcher, attempted to blockade the Carthaginian fleet at the port of Drepana in Sicily. However, due to poor organization and tactical errors, Pulcher's forces were decisively beaten. Outcome: Carthage won a significant victory in this battle, destroying much of the Roman fleet. However, Rome quickly rebuilt its navy and prepared for future engagements. Carthage failed to capitalize on this victory for long-term strategic gain. 2. The Battle of the Aegates Islands, 241 BCE. The final battle of the First Punic War was the Battle of the Aegates Islands, fought in 241 BCE, which resulted in a decisive defeat for Carthage. The event, after years of protracted warfare on land and sea around Sicily, both sides were exhausted. However, Rome gathered enough resources to rebuild its fleet. In the naval battle near the Aegates Islands, the Roman fleet intercepted Carthaginian reinforcements and crushed their forces. Outcome: this defeat forced Carthage to sue for peace. Carthage had to cede Sicily, pay a large indemnity, and give up its ambitions of expansion in the Mediterranean. This marked a significant military and economic setback for the Carthaginian Empire. 2. Defeats in the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE. The Second Punic War, the most famous of the three, is marked by Hannibal's initial successes but also several decisive defeats that ultimately led to Carthage's loss in the war. 1. The Battle of Zama, 202 BCE. The Battle of Zama was the climactic and concluding battle of the Second Punic War, in which Roman general Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal and the Carthaginian forces. The event, after several years of warfare in Italy, where Hannibal achieved numerous victories such as at Cannae, he was forced to return to Carthage to defend it from Scipio's invasion. At Zama, Scipio used tactics he had learned from Hannibal, combined with the support of Numidian cavalry, to decisively defeat the Carthaginian forces. Outcome: Hannibal's army was completely defeated. Carthage was forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty, surrendering all of its overseas territories and paying a large indemnity. This marked the irreversible decline of Carthage as a significant power in the Mediterranean. 2. Diplomatic and strategic failures. During the Second Punic War, one of the major reasons for Carthage's defeat came not just from the battlefield, but from failures in governance and diplomacy. Lack of support from Carthage. One of the key reasons why Hannibal could not defeat Rome entirely was due to the lack of support from Carthage's government. Despite Hannibal's victories, the Carthaginian leadership did not send sufficient reinforcements or logistical support, leaving Hannibal stranded in Italy without the necessary resources to fully execute his plans. Unreliable allies. Hannibal tried to convince Rome's Italian allies, particularly cities in the south, to defect to his side. However, these allies provided inadequate support, and many cities remained loyal to Rome, which undermined Hannibal's strategic goal of breaking Rome's alliances. 3. Defeats in the Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE. 1. Strategic miscalculations of Carthage. After the Second Punic War, Carthage was severely weakened and militarily restricted. However, it experienced an economic recovery in the decades that followed, which alarmed the Roman Senate. The spark of the Third Punic War. The war began when Carthage defended itself against Numidian invasions without Rome's approval, violating the terms of the previous peace treaty. This provided Rome with a pretext to declare war on Carthage. Strategic failure. Instead of quickly capitulating or seeking a diplomatic resolution, Carthage decided to resist Rome without possessing a strong military or reliable allies. This decision led to the Siege of Carthage, during which the city was completely isolated and cut off from any form of assistance. 2. The Fall of Carthage, 146 BCE. The final siege of Carthage lasted for 3 years, and despite the fierce resistance of its inhabitants, Carthage could not withstand the superior military force of Rome. The event, Roman forces, under the command of Scipio Aemilianus, besieged the city of Carthage from 149 BCE onward. After 3 years of cutting off supplies and systematically weakening the city's defenses, the Romans launched their final assault. Outcome: in 146 BCE, Carthage was completely destroyed. Its population was either killed or sold into slavery, and the city was razed to the ground. The territory of Carthage became a Roman province, marking the end of the once great Carthaginian Empire. Main reasons for Carthage's defeats. Internal disunity. Throughout the Punic Wars, the Carthaginian government often lacked unity and failed to provide adequate support to its military commanders, particularly Hannibal. This lack of internal coordination severely undermined Carthage's ability to fight effectively. Reliance on mercenaries. Carthage's military was heavily reliant on mercenary forces, while Rome had a citizen army that was disciplined and loyal. This reliance on mercenaries led to instability within Carthage's military ranks and made it difficult to maintain a cohesive fighting force. Weak diplomatic strategy. Carthage was unable to build strong alliances or maintain the loyalty of its allies, particularly during the Second Punic War, where Hannibal's hopes for support from Italian cities were largely unmet. Rome's military strength and willpower. Rome, even when suffering defeats on the battlefield, demonstrated an incredible capacity to recover and continue fighting. Carthage, on the other hand, did not have the long-term strategic endurance needed to match Rome's relentless military campaigns. Conclusion: Carthage's major defeats in the Punic Wars led to the eventual collapse of an empire that once dominated the Mediterranean. Despite Hannibal's early successes, Carthage's strategic miscalculations, lack of internal support, and failure to match Rome's military and political resilience ultimately sealed its fate. These defeats culminated in the complete destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE, marking the end of one of the greatest powers of the ancient world and solidifying Rome's dominance over the Mediterranean for centuries to come. The collapse of Carthage was not simply a result of battlefield defeats, but stemmed from a combination of political, military, and economic weaknesses that exacerbated their inability to withstand Rome's relentless expansion. Understanding Carthage's downfall requires a deeper exploration of the systemic issues that plagued its ability to sustain a prolonged conflict with Rome, and how these factors intertwine to lead to the empire's destruction. 1. Political disunity and lack of strategic coordination. One of Carthage's greatest internal weaknesses was its lack of political unity. Unlike Rome, which had developed a stable republican system capable of uniting its people behind long-term military goals, Carthage suffered from fragmented political leadership. The city was controlled by a wealthy mercantile oligarchy, whose members were often more concerned with protecting their commercial interests than with supporting prolonged military campaigns. This lack of cohesion within the Carthaginian leadership had several critical impacts. Reluctance to support Hannibal. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal's bold invasion of Italy was undermined by Carthage's reluctance to fully commit to the war effort. The governing elite, focused on safeguarding their wealth and trade networks, hesitated to send reinforcements and adequate supplies to Hannibal, even when he won significant victories like the Battle of Cannae. As a result, Hannibal's campaigns became isolated, depriving him of the logistical support needed to deliver a decisive blow against Rome. Contrast with Roman unity, Rome, in contrast, and resilience in the face of defeat. Despite suffering catastrophic losses at the hands of Hannibal, particularly at the Battle of Cannae where nearly 50,000 Roman soldiers were killed, Rome's Senate and citizens refused to capitulate. The Roman political system was highly adaptable, and the Senate was able to rally the population and continue the war effort by enacting emergency measures, raising new legions, and employing a long-term strategy. This level of commitment allowed Rome to outlast Carthage in what became a war of attrition. 2. Carthage's reliance on mercenaries. Carthage's military strength heavily relied on hired mercenaries from various parts of the Mediterranean, including Numidia, Iberia, and Gaul. While these mercenaries were often highly skilled fighters, Carthage's dependence on them presented several significant issues.